Matthew chapter 27, verses 45 to 56. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, He's calling Elijah. Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. When Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, Surely he was the Son of God. Many women were there, watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons.
And the hammer fell on the wooden nail, threw his flesh into the tree. As they laughed at him, as he cried for them, and there he hung, the faultless one. Now didn't he live, or didn't he? And didn't he give, or didn't he? But didn't he die for you and me? Spill this precious blood, sacrifice of love. We didn't take his life from him, he gave it willingly. Fulfill the prophecy. What's black is white, and what's wrong is right. Now didn't he live, or didn't he? And didn't he give, or didn't he? But didn't he die for you and me? Burglar, blow your horn. Now the curtain's torn and the battle's done. I know the victory's come. Drummer, drum your drum. He broke death's chains and the lamb is slain. Now didn't he live? didn't he give? Oh, didn't he? Didn't he die for you and me? Now doesn't he live, my brother, doesn't he? Now doesn't he give, sweet sister, doesn't he? But didn't he die for you and me? But didn't he die for you and me?
Matthew 28, verses 1 to 10. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me."
This reading comes from Matthew chapter 28 and verses 16 to 20. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of this age." I don't know whether you've ever heard the idea mentioned that someone is preaching to the choir, the idea being that he's telling people who already agree with him things that they will accept. Today I don't feel so much that I'm preaching to the choir, so much that I'm preaching to myself. I'm finding things particularly hard at the moment. Life is tough, and I really need the touch of the Easter encouragement in my life. I feel discouraged and I feel flat about things, and I guess in a way I don't know whether I'm meant to share that or not. Pastors, ministers, vicars, priests are always meant to feel up and be there in strength for others. Well, I'm not, and so it is difficult at the moment. So when we come to this message of Easter, I need it to touch me in my heart, and I hope you're looking for Easter to touch you in your hearts. We had 3 readings today, partially because I wanted to cover as much of the Easter story as possible. And that is difficult when we haven't had a Maundy Thursday service or a Good Friday service. It is all in one day, Easter Sunday. And in a way, a couple of years ago, I became very wary of doing that. Something that we're not able to do this year is that we would traditionally have a point in the service where the preacher says to the congregation, go and give everyone the peace, or offer them a happy Easter or something like that, and people would go around and shake hands or hug or something. We can't do those things. And a couple of years ago, one lady who was at the service said to her neighbor within my hearing, isn't it dreadful at this church? We've been here half an hour now, and he hasn't said anything about Easter Sunday, because I'd been talking in the first half of the service about the crucifixion. But I maintain the position that without the crucifixion, the resurrection is impossible and can mean nothing. And so whilst one is more painful to talk about than the other, we do need to understand both. So today, from the 3 readings that we've had, I have tried to pick out one point from each. One point about the crucifixion, one point about the resurrection itself, and one point about the commissioning of the disciples, a tradition of commissioning that we are part of, because we are in many ways the descendants of the disciples. We are the disciples, if we should choose to be, of this generation. Jesus, when he was hung on the cross, cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. And that is Aramaic. And it means, my God, why have you forsaken me? And many times I'm asked the question, why did Jesus say this? And therefore, in sermons in the past, I've answered that question many times, and I'm not going to touch on it today. Maybe next year, or maybe when we do Easter in a few weeks' time. Who knows? What I wanted to think about was the way that those in the crowd thought that because he said Eli or Eloi, he was calling out for Elijah, and why that might be the case. The Jewish people of Jesus' day felt very strongly that the Old Testament prophesied that before the Messiah could come, Elijah must come. And now they felt that Jesus, who they had hoped might be the Messiah, could not be the Messiah because it seemed he was about to die. And so therefore, if the Messiah hadn't come, now they were hoping that Elijah would come and make the first step in this two-part plan that they believed that God had. And this is quite confusing because some people at that time believed that Elijah had already come. And they had gone to John the Baptist and said to him, "Are you Elijah?" Or even, "Are you the Messiah?" And John the Baptist had said no. But then when we read the Gospels, they went to Jesus. And he gave a different answer. And he said that amongst the men who were born of women, John the Baptist was the greatest. And he was, if you could accept it, if we can accept it, the Elijah who was to come. Now, is this a contradiction in the Bible? Well, no. In English, we have a very long tradition of what we call paradox. Two things that don't seem to agree, but actually can stand alongside each other. Now, there are things about yourself that if asked, you would say, "Oh, no." You know, it starts off when you're at school. You know, when you're at, say you're 14 at school, and you're very fond of, if you're a girl, maybe you're fond of a boy in your class. Or if you are a boy, maybe you're fond of a girl in your class. I don't know. And your friends at school, they come to you and say, "Na, na, 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 na. You're in love with," and you say, "No, I'm not." And then to prove that you're not in love with him, the next time you see him, you hit him with your satchel. And you're really nasty with him. You know, it's the great sign of love. When you're 14, you hit people with your satchel to prove you're not in love. Like those who are old enough to remember a great song by 10cc. I'm not in love, you know. And part of one of the verses says, you know, "I keep your picture upon my wall. It hides a nasty stain just lying there. But don't you ask me to give it back." And then the chorus, "I'm not in love. No, no." And of course, the narrator is very much in love. And there are other things that we don't understand about ourselves. Somebody might say, "Oh, well, you know, this person is very talented in this area." And we, because we don't understand ourselves perfectly, we say, "No, I'm not. You're exaggerating. I'm not very good at all." And the reality is that God knows better than we do. So if John the Baptist says, "I'm not Elijah," and the Son of God says, John the Baptist is Elijah, I'm voting with the Son of God. And then we have the great mystery of, if Elijah has come, and therefore the prophecy is fulfilled, how come the Messiah hasn't come? Because the one we thought might be the Messiah is dying on a cross. And surely that couldn't be God's plan. You know, there's the old thing about God moving in mysterious ways. We could have stayed up many, many nights drawing up plans, wondering how God might save our world. And we would never have come up with the plan that he did. So we should be thankful, and we should be in awe of the wisdom of God. Our second reading talked about the occasion of Jesus being raised from the dead. One thing we often overlook in these stories is the earthquakes. And as we look at these sections, we now find out not one earthquake, but two earthquakes. One when Jesus died and gave up his spirit, tells us that the earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. And then here, we talk about the stone being rolled away. And part of the way in which the stone was rolled away was because an earthquake disturbed it from its positioning. It says there was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. And then the angel said this, and the angels have this annoying habit of saying this in so many of the passages where angels show up. The angel said, "Do not be afraid." Why would they possibly be afraid? An angel had come down from heaven, the earth had shook violently, the stone had rolled away, and as they approached the tomb was open, and an angel was sat upon the rock that had been sealing it up. And his appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. Why could they possibly be afraid? Other people who were there, the guards of the tomb, they were so afraid that they shook and they became like dead men. Why would they possibly be afraid? It's like in the mountains or the hills, I should say, over Bethlehem. You know, the skies split asunder, and the hordes of angels who are singing and praising God. And they say to the shepherds, who are usually the worst thing they ever have to deal with, are wolves or coyotes or whatever. Do they have coyotes in Israel? I don't know. Do coyotes go after sheep? I know they go after roadrunners, but that's maybe a different story. If you don't know what I'm referring to, you should. But that's usually their biggest problem. They didn't have to deal with holy things because their lifestyle precluded them from going to the temple. And now they were surrounded by angels who were singing and praising God. And they said, "Do not be afraid." Why would they be afraid? But they had this to say to the women: "Go quickly and tell his disciples." I would have gone quickly, but I would have been running away, running as fast as my feet would carry me to some place where there weren't earthquakes and rocks rolling around and angels sitting on top of them. And I would have gone somewhere where I felt safe. Now, in society at the moment, it is very hard to find somewhere you feel safe. And for the disciples then, it would have been very hard to find somewhere that they felt safe. We're told in another event that they were meeting together in an upper room and the doors were locked. That's how safe they felt. You know, this is kind of, it's not like our society. It's not like deadbolts and Yale locks. No. I once visited a friend in New York, and he seemed to have about 27 bolts on the back of his door. People then wouldn't have locked their doors, usually. But the disciples thought, well, they've killed our boss. They're coming after us next. But if you lock a door and somebody comes in anyway, that's either a reason to be afraid or a reason to put your confidence in the one who has come in. And that one was Jesus. So that is a call for our response this Easter. The disciples could probably have been divided into two groups after he came through that locked door. It says in our final reading, when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Which category would I put myself in? Which category would you put yourself in? Or are we simply in the category where we have become so blasé of hearing these stories year in and year out that we don't consider that? In that final passage, Jesus says something that is amazing. He says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me." You know, we are used to, if we know our Bibles a little, we are used to thinking of Satan, the devil, as being the prince of this world. But Jesus here says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Is that a contradiction? Or two things that sit neatly alongside each other? There's another point in the Bible in the Old Testament where a wicked character is referred to as morning star. But then there are points in the New Testament where Jesus is referred to as morning star. Is that a contradiction, or two things that sit neatly alongside each other? I'm arguing that they are paradoxes, two things that neatly sit alongside each other. And the crucial thing for us is that we can accept that all power is given to Jesus in heaven and on earth. And that means, he says, that we are to teach people everything he has commanded us, everything he commanded them, making disciples as we go and baptizing people. I mentioned at the early part of the service that a friend is getting baptized today. Isabel got baptized on an Easter Sunday just a few years ago. It is a series of events that demands a response. One is a response for us to say we believe and be baptized. The other is then to accept all the things that Jesus has taught us and go out and share those things. The church is in a weakened position worldwide because so many people have rejected or compromised on the things that Jesus taught us. And we can't convincingly pass them along if we don't believe them ourselves. So when Jesus says, all power is given to me in heaven and on earth, do we know right here and now what that power is worth in our lives? As I say, this Easter, I have a lot to think about. Many challenges to face. I hope that you find the challenges or the comfort that you need in this Easter, and that it will sustain you for the time that lies ahead. Amen.
When they came for him in the garden, didn't know. When they came for him in the garden, didn't know. Didn't know that he was the Son of God. Didn't know that he was Lord. Did they hear when he told Peter, Peter, put up your sword? When they came for him in the garden, didn't know. When they came for him in the garden, didn't know. When he spoke to them in the city, did they hear? When he spoke to them in the city, did they hear? Nicodemus came at night, so wouldn't listen but men, saying, Master, tell me why a man must be born again. When he spoke to them in the city, didn't know. When he spoke to them in the city, did they hear? When he healed the blind and crippled, did they see? When he healed the blind and crippled, did they see? when he said, pick up your bed and walk, why must you criticize? Same thing my Father do, I can do likewise. When he healed the blind and crippled, did I see? When he healed the blind and crippled, did I see? Did I speak out against him? Did I dare? Did I speak out against him? Did I dare? The multitude wanted to make him king, put a crown upon his head. Why did he slip away to a quiet place instead? Did I speak out against him? Did I dare? Did I speak out against him? Did I dare? When he rose from the dead, did I believe? When he rose from the dead, did I believe? He said, all power is given to me in heaven and on earth. Did I know right then and there what power was worth? When he rose from the dead, did I believe? When he rose from the dead, did I believe? When they came for him in the garden, did I know? When they came for him in the garden, did I know?